Rob, as the season draws ever closer, lots happening off the park, so just a chance to update supporters and keep them informed of what's happening. If we can start please with a season ticket, what's the very latest on sales?
Well, as I'm sure most of the fans saw, we were able to get through the 7,000 mark just at the weekend, and it's been a strong weekend and Monday of sales. So we're up at about 7,100 as I speak. And hoping that number will grow. Hopefully over the next few days, we've got the deadline coming up at the end of the week in terms of keeping your seat, and the 6-month finance extension as well. So hopefully a strong week in terms of season ticket sales.
Yeah. Rob, just in the grand scheme of things, just how important is the money from season ticket sales at the moment?
Well, Mel, let's wind the clock back to middle of March when we had to close the doors at Pittodrie, and in reality, all of our income just fell off the side of a cliff. That's the challenge that we faced back then. There were no hospitality clients, there were no fans in stadiums, the retail shop was closed. So the opportunity to obviously get back to some level of retail soon is great, but the reality is the season ticket money has been absolutely key over the last sort of 90 days to keep the club in good shape. If you look at our annual football budget of around £9 million, season ticket income is about 2.1 of that. DNA adds another 1.2. Walk-ups, both home and away, add another $1 million. So you get a sense of just how important season ticket income is.
Okay. That's the 7,000 reached. What's the next target you hope to get to?
Well, I'd like to think we'll get at least to 8,000 by the time we get to the start of the season. We've got 3 weeks to run until we get to that opening game of the season, and I'd say 8,000 at least is a realistic target. If we can push beyond that, I think it'll be terrific. My sense is that when you look on social media, I get a real sense that there are a number of people out there who haven't yet committed, and we appreciate the challenges that the pandemic has thrown at people in and around Aberdeen, and some of the financial challenges that buying a season ticket may present. But the reality is, I think people have been waiting for the fixtures, which we've obviously seen released on Monday. An interesting first encounter with Rangers at home, so looking forward to that. And the reality is, I think there's still a large number of folk who hopefully are in a position to commit to a season ticket in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Rob, a statement went out last week about the partial crowds, and a number of questions came back from fans. Just how confident are you that the 7,500 will be the number allowed in? How was that figure reached?
So we've obviously got to follow government guidance. We've got to look at what the SPFL and the SFA are telling us as well. We want to get back to football in front of crowds as soon as we possibly can, but we've got to do so in a safe way. Things are changing on a daily basis, so we've got to be cognizant of that. But the reality is, if we get to a point where we've got 1 metre of social distancing, then 7,500 is just 38% of capacity in Pittodrie. So that strikes us as a good number. The ticket office and our operations team have done lots of work on this, and we feel comfortable that that's the sort of number that for partial crowds is going to be realistic.
Okay. I know, Rob, there's a lot of discussions going on behind the scenes, an awful lot of meetings and things, but the government came out and made it very clear that partial crowds will not be allowed in until October. Do you think there's any way that could change?
Mel, we've got to keep an open mind. I think if one thing that we've learned through the course of this pandemic is that things change and evolve on a daily basis. And as I say, we remain hopeful that things will change in such a way that we can get to partial crowds sooner rather than later. The operations team here, the football operations team in particular, the stadium operations team, we've all been very closely involved with the working groups that have been putting together the different strategies in terms of how we progress. And as I say, we're encouraged and we're hopeful that we can get back to playing in front of at least partial crowds sooner rather than later.
Okay, well, so with that in mind, has there been a lot of work done? So we're ready for partial crowds?
Absolutely. Well, as a club, we've obviously been meeting every week. We've had a small team who've met every week to drive forward all of the different initiatives and different challenges that we faced as a club. But as I say, football operations in particular, on the broadcasting side, on the commercial side as well, there's been a lot of participation by senior people from the club representing Aberdeen and representing the wider interests of the game in Scotland, participating in regular groups, regular sessions. All of this information and suggestions and planning is then fed into the joint response group. And so out of that, we're now starting to see the sort of fruits of that labour. So we've seen a return to training document come recently. We've then just in the last day or so seen a return to play as well, with all of the detailed guidelines of some of the challenges that we're going to have to overcome, whether that's playing fully behind closed doors or even with partial crowds.
And Robert, there was a number of questions about how disabled fan access, red shed, how do you social distance inside there? Even how you get people through the turnstiles. But everything will be done aligned with the government guidance, won't it? And it is, these fans watch this space. As soon as we have information, we'll let them know.
100%. I think the one thing that's been absolutely apparent, whether it's been discussing, the price of a pay-per-view ticket, or whether it's how crowds access a football ground. The reality is every club has a different challenge. No two football grounds are alike. So we've got to do what's in the best interests of our fans, but that is also in line with the guidance that we met, so that we can get back to playing in front of fans, but that we can do so safely.
When we do get fans back in, hopefully sooner rather than later, we've heard a lot of a real commitment to improve the fan experience. So, just where are we with that? What can the Red Army expect to see?
Well, Mel, I think the reality is we were looking at a number of things pre-pandemic. Lots of things were sort of on the boil quietly, and what a couple of months of lockdown's done is given us an opportunity to sort of really focus in on some of the things that we want to do and how best we can execute on those. So, for us, I think there are probably three things that are a real priority. When I talk to fans, an improved match day experience is high up on their list of things that they'd like to see happen at the club. So, first and foremost, the idea of a fan zone is something we've been touting around for a long time, and I think something that we now want to make a reality in season 2021. Even if that's on the basis of a trial. We know at the new stadium there is a space allocation specifically for a fan zone. So we're going to look at what we do here. There'll be some key learnings to come out of the experience, and I think a fan zone is great because you can get people to the stadium earlier. You can provide entertainment for a broad range of ages. Our latest thinking is that probably actually have two areas. One which is more of an area for adults, where there might be beer and food available, but then we don't want to not cater for our younger audience as well. So could we potentially utilise the back of the Richard Donald stand in the lead up to a game, put on a whole series of different activities, face painting, football challenges. So that's where the thinking is. In terms of the adult area, is that outside on the concourse behind the Richard Donald stand? That's an option. We've also talked to the council about hiring the cricket pitch just alongside the golf links. So there are some opportunities there. So hopefully some sort of semi-permanent structure in time that will allow us to operate a fan zone ahead of a number of the matches. I think the other area that's going to be really key for us is to really lift the look and feel of the stadium, and we look to do that in the way of some new branding, both inside and outside of the stadium. I think is a great opportunity to look at some of the heroes of the past, some of our past successes as a football club, and let's make the most of those, so that when you arrive, you really feel like you're at an important football ground in terms of Scottish footballing history. Why wouldn't we do something like that? And then last but not least, we're looking at the opportunity to integrate some big screens into the stadium as well. It's always surprised me in the 2 years I've had here why we don't have a scoreboard or a clock. We've used the LED screens for a clock. So why can't we perhaps look at a big screen or two somewhere in the stadium that can present some pre-match entertainment, can provide updates through the course of a game, whether that's from social media or otherwise. provide score updates, etc. So those are sort of the three key areas we're looking at.
Okay. Rob, some of the viewers watching this might say, well, if we're losing £10 million and if we're also, still hoping to move to a new stadium, why would we want to spend this money?
It's a good question, Mel, particularly in the current climate. I think the reality is we've got to keep people engaged over the longer term. COVID-19 is for all intents and purposes, is going to go away, and we will get through this as a club. So we're looking at this with a longer term hat on. What we are saying as well, though, is particularly, for example, things like a fan zone or a big screen, these also represent a commercial opportunity. And so if we can offset the cost of implementing these at the stadium through involving a partner or selling advertising in or on or around whatever it is that we produce, then that will certainly help to offset the cost. I think the encouraging thing as well, from the research that we did not so long ago, we had 400 or 500 fans from the Red Army say they could give up some time and commit to helping us with some of the redecorating that we want to do. So I think there's ways and means of doing it, and I think all the better if we can involve people as well, so that they're part of what we do.
Rob, until we do get fans back in, season ticket holders will have to rely on virtual season tickets to see the games. I know you've been very heavily involved with the virtual season ticket concept. Can you just tell me a wee bit more about the work that's gone into it to make this possible?
Well, Mel, the first thing that I guess the SPFL had to do was to look at wrapping up the 2019-20 season with Sky. And that once that was concluded, we could really start thinking more in earnest about 2021. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes, for sure, because in reality, what we're talking about is a season ticket that now will have a virtual component. So we've got to really contract with our season ticket holders in a slightly different way and get them to accept that some of the season's going to be delivered virtually. So we've been working with our streaming partner, Stream Digital. They've been doing a huge amount of work to basically create the platform on which all of our season ticket holders and paid up corporates will be able to access games as and when they're broadcast. So I think it's the situation's been made perhaps even a little more complex because the SPFL have got a new broadcast partner as well. So that's been added to the mix and a new dimension to think about. But we're in good shape, I'm pleased to say. I think for a number of clubs it's been quite a challenge. But Red TV, I would like to think, leads the way in Scottish football in terms of an OTT platform. And I think being in that position early on has given us the opportunity to sort of get ahead of the game early on.
I know a lot of people have been asking, for those who don't have the virtual season ticket, what's the latest with the pay-per-view option?
I'd like to think we'll get to a pay-per-view option for sure. We're hopeful of seeing some outlined terms and conditions of pay-per-view at some point in the next week or two from the SPFL. In fact, we're consulting with fans just this week on their thoughts around pay-per-view, what likely costs would be for a pay-per-view game. It's something that I think is really important because we're missing out obviously on income from away fans, and by running a pay-per-view option, we would in essence have away fans paying us to watch the game while it's streamed. In the same way, the Red Army would have to use a pay-per-view option to watch us playing away by buying a pay-per-view option from the away club that we're playing. So I think in essence it's been carved out and done in the right way. But the reality is the focus has been heavily around virtual season tickets to start with.
Okay. What can fans expect to see? These virtual season ticket holders tune in. What can they expect to see?
Well, again, much like our thinking around some of the new pieces of fan engagement, we've been looking and thinking quite long and hard about Red TV and some upgrades and improvements to Red TV. So, if anything, COVID-19's probably forced our hand, which is a good thing because it's given it a lot of focus. So, what I'd like to think is we'll get ourselves to a point where it feels and looks like a broadcast in its own right, rather than switching on at 5 to 3 and here's 90 minutes of football. Let's come in at 2:15 and there'll be a presenter. who will give you a whole lot of pre-game information, talk you through, team lineups, all of the sort of things that you'd expect if you were watching a traditional broadcaster. Into a halftime show, we're looking to introduce some new pundits as well, some post-match analysis as well. So it'll be, I'd say, at least sort of 2.5 hours worth of broadcast. And I think that's really going to enhance and augment what we're offering currently. It's a big step forward. We've seen a couple of the other clubs moving in a similar direction. And I think it's very much the right thing to do. Longer term, the way television rights are moving, for us to have a strong in-house television channel is a very important thing. And if we can take these initial steps, and it'll be a phased approach, I think that's the right thing for us.
Okay. What's been done so we can cope with the increased demand in the product? Because there's obviously going to be quite a big increase.
So obviously been working closely with our partner Stream Digital, and the reality there is, Mel, what they've done is the Red TV site as we currently know it will remain largely untouched. It's getting a nice refresh and an upgrade. It looks and feels, from the beta version that I've seen, really, really good. And I think fans will enjoy that. So if you're a Red TV International subscriber, you will go in as you would normally, and you won't notice any difference. In parallel to that, Stream Digital have created a separate site that will offer the virtual season ticket access. It'll be exactly the same feed, same commentary, same viewing experience, but really to minimize any of the risk and some of the challenges with obviously high numbers of fans watching at the same time. They'll be run separately and streamed independently of one another, and I think that's again an important step forward.
Okay. I know the prices are going up next year for Red TV subscribers. Can you explain a wee bit about the reason behind that?
Well, as I say, I think the reality is we've invested in Red TV over the last few seasons. We've gone from providing audio commentary on some matches to some limited live viewing to now, I think over the last 3 seasons, we've shown every game live, and that comes at a cost. So we're looking to invest in that. We'd like to think that the price that we offer is still incredibly fair. On the basis of the Red TV International pricing. So yes, prices will go up, but I think it's a reflection of the times, and I think it's a reflection of the investment and the enhancements that we're bringing to the product.
I think it's a really important point to emphasise, Rob, that there's been a lot of money invested back into Red TV, isn't it? A lot of that subscription money goes back into improving the product. I mean, really, the quality and reliability of the last years improved a lot. And this is really an opportunity now to take it to another level, isn't it?
Very much so. I think over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been, great resilience built into the system. I think the quality of the broadcast has improved. It's all done in HD. You can mirror to your television from your phone sitting at home, as I sometimes do. It's, it really is moving on to a new level. And this is the way broadcasting is going. So it's really important for a club that we continue to invest in this as a product. If I was to add up all of the different costs that go into running Red TV versus the revenue that we currently bring in, I think we'd be really lucky to break even. It's probably costing us a reasonable chunk each year. So it's probably about time for a price increase. But I think the reality is that you're going to see that reflected in the quality of the broadcast and the output in the months ahead.
Okay, so what other improvements can Red TV viewers expect to see over the next season?
So I think a lot more behind the scenes access is kind of where we're going. We want fans wherever they are in the world to feel like they're next door to Pittodrie or next door to Cormac Park. I envisage a world, and I know it's quite a big step for us to be taking, but I envisage a world where we've got a studio at Cormac Park, a studio here at Pittodrie, where we can present some fantastic non-match day content as well. And it's something that's an attraction for fans. It adds to the actual match day experience as well. So I think we've got some exciting plans for Red TV, and I'd say watch the space in the weeks and months ahead.
We'll move on to the world of retail now. First of all, how are the kit sales going down?
I think they've gone really well. I'm pleased to say. Obviously we launched the home and the away kit simultaneously. We normally have a 6-week break between the 2 launches. But we were in a position, given that we're very early on in the production cycle, to be able to do that. Again, it's proved to be an important source of revenue for the club, and I'd really give a big shout out to Jason and the retail team for the work that they've been doing behind the scenes. We've been in lockdown, but these guys have been, working hard behind the scenes to deliver, whether it's DNA shirts or the pre-orders, and take deliveries of huge volumes of stock, and also to now start getting ready for the shop to open.
There have been many comments I've seen on social media, and I think I would agree with this as well, that when you actually see the kits in person, they do look a lot better. Is that would you agree with that?
I think the reality is when you're taking photographs in Andy Considine's back garden for the kit launch, it's not really a fair reflection on the quality of the product. So absolutely, we'd encourage fans when the opportunity arises to come in and see it firsthand if they haven't yet. They're both fantastic kits, very, very striking, both home and away, not to mention the training wear. And yes, I think, see them in person and then make up your mind if you haven't bought one yet.
Yeah, obviously nothing against Andy's back garden. You mentioned the training kit, is that on sale now as well?
It is, and it looks absolutely terrific. It's a really, really nice range, white, grey, red, black. It looks really terrific. I think Adidas have done a super job with that.
Again, Rob, looking at some of the comments from fans and keeping on top of what they're saying, I know there have been some issues this year. Can you maybe just explain a wee bit about what they are?
So we know there have been a couple of delays, things like the away socks, goalkeeper kits and mini kits. Fortunately, these are all now, just a matter of a couple of weeks away from being with us. But if you think about the size and scale of a business like Adidas, with the global supply chain that they have, and the scale of clubs that they work with, I think we were probably quite fortunate to be early in the production cycle. We're one of the first clubs in the UK to launch new kits each year, so we were able to get both home and away kits out. If you look at other clubs in Scotland, there are a number who haven't yet actually launched their kits, and those are still to come. So it gives you a sense of some of the challenges. But the reality is that they're long-term partners with us, Adidas, and when you find yourself in a pickle, that's what partners do. You work together and you find a solution. So I think, as I say, weeks away now for the few bits and pieces that are still to come in.
Yeah. I think it's important to make the point, Rob, that there's a fantastic relationship with Adidas. I know myself from being here 20 years as kit supplier, they've been head and shoulders above anybody else we've dealt with. So we maybe just have to cut them a wee bit of slack, because of the problems with COVID-19.
Absolutely, they are great partners for the club. They're an extremely well-renowned, global brand. They bring a lot of value to the club, we work closely with them at a number of levels. We're a long way down the line already to designing the 21-22 kit. And the reality is we've got to work closely with them, whatever the circumstances. We're on the cusp of signing a new 5-year agreement with them moving forward. There've been some personnel changes at Addy in the last couple of months, but we're seen and we're treated in a very good way by them as a brand, which is is a good place to be.
Okay. When's the shop opening? When can fans come and see the kit in the shops?
So we're starting, Mel, with a click and collect service this week, which is a good first step. We'll be using the ticket office window as a starting point, but then looking to open the store from Monday next week with, as you can imagine, all of the social distancing elements in place, restricted numbers in to start with, and limited hours as well from an opening perspective, initially starting from 10 and through until 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. I would imagine it'd be quite a different shopping experience to what the fans are used to, especially those who usually shop in a match day. But again, the most important thing will be a safe one, and very much with the guidelines.
Very much so. Again, we've had some good support from Adidas and some good input as to how we might do that. It's a small space, as most of the fans know, but Jason and the team are working as we speak to set up the shop in such a way so that it works well for everybody. But I'd certainly encourage people to come on down and enjoy the experience and see the full 2021 range that's in stock.
And just finally on the retail side, will the ticket office, obviously next to the shop, will that be opening at the same time as well?
A couple of days later, so 16th of July, we'll be looking to open the ticket office, and it'd be great to see a few friendly faces come in and say hi in the ticket office as well.
Rob, just finally, more generally, can you sum up how challenging the last 100 days or so have been?
Mel, I think it's been enormously challenging. I think it's been a worrying time when you think about everything that's at stake. You know, the future of the football club, and not just this football club. You know, you see businesses around the city and some of the challenges that we've got. You know, I've been talking to friends the world over, and some work in the airline industry, and you hear the challenges that people have had to face. It's been an incredibly scary time, but I think the manner in which the club has reacted and responded. I think the leadership from the chairman has been exemplary. I think he's done an incredible job, albeit from 6,000 miles away in Atlanta, to rally everybody here and keep everybody positive. So that's been a real bonus. But I think we've also had the added challenge. If COVID-19 wasn't enough of a challenge in its own right, then we've also had, you know, the challenges of reconstruction come our way, and I don't think we're out of the woods on that one just yet, as you know. But on the face of it, I think we've been absolutely blown away by the fans. The response that we've seen from the fans has been overwhelming, from both near and far. I've spoken to fans in and around Aberdeen. I've done some food deliveries and a whole range of different things here in town. But I've also spoken to fans in Calgary, fans in Perth, fans in Dubai. And that same level of empathy and concern is there no matter where they are in the world. So that's been very humbling, and I think it's kept us going to understand just how the fans feel from so far away.
How well do you think that the business has adapted to change?
I think the business has actually done quite well. I think we've become more agile. I think having the Still Standing Free campaign gave us something to all rally around as a group. I think that made a really big difference. And I think, you know, what we did is we divided and conquered, and played to everybody's strengths where we could. You know, it was really clear that early on job descriptions were going to go out the window, and we were all going to do some things that we weren't perhaps, you know, used to. We set up a virtual call centre out of nowhere using resources from the trust, from the supporter engagement team and the ticket office. And it's one thing when you're running a call centre and you're all sitting with one another and you can bounce ideas around. But when you're stuck at home and you're the only voice you hear, you know, that group of 20 odd people have made in excess of 15,000 calls to fans over the last 100 days. So it's been just incredible. And I think it's shown us as well, maybe that's something that we need to think about for the longer term as well. You know, just that engagement and that interaction that we've been able to have with fans. So I think it's given us a lot to think about.
Yeah. I was going to ask, does the chairman sleep at all, by the way?
No. We're going to present him with a case of Relentless energy drink when he gets over here. I think he's known for his relentless spirit, and he certainly keeps us on our toes. You know, you're just thinking about going to bed. And there's a text or there's an email because he's got a 6-hour lead on you because he's only just waking up, and you know, you go to bed and you wake up the next morning and you think he's gone to bed by now, and he hasn't. And he's still awake. He was first to note who we were playing in the opening fixture of the season this morning before the fixtures had even been opened in my inbox. So he doesn't get a lot of sleep, I think.
Just finally, I mean, have there been lessons learned how we can improve the business going forward, and I mean, just things that can help make the club stronger?
Mel, I think absolutely. I think we've probably interrogated the business now more than ever before. We've asked questions about all sorts of different parts of the business. I think what's been a really encouraging and a very positive step forward for us as a club is people have had the opportunity to be involved in conversations where perhaps previously they weren't, and they've got involved in things where they might otherwise not have been asked to get involved. And so many more people have learned that much more about the business. So that I see that as a huge positive, because, you know, we've shared in a common experience. We've all learnt a lot more about other parts of the business, and I think longer term for us, that can only be a good thing. And I think, last but not least, if anything, it's brought us a lot closer to the fans, and I think it's brought the fans a lot closer to the club. And in footballing terms, that can't be a bad thing.
Rob, appreciate the update. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you.